On my birthday, my sister's daughter dumped her drink on my outfit and smirked. Now you look as cheap as you really are. My mom sided with her. I kept smiling. That night I canceled my sister's credit card. But at 8:40 a.m. the next morning, her daughter woke up to find her car gone, and Sophie's reaction surprised me. We'd had petty spats before, eye rolls at family events, snarky remarks she thought were clever. Still, none of that justified what she did that night. It wasn't only the words or tone, she did it on purpose, in front of everyone, and treated it like a casual joke. Worse, her father watched and said nothing. Not even. That wasn't appropriate. He just stared at his plate like it wasn't his problem. The rest of the family, my mom included, seemed uncertain how to respond, as if they'd forgotten basic decency. The evening had begun normally. I'd kept the birthday small to avoid the usual chaos. A quiet dinner at home. I cooked all day, set the table, and made sure things felt welcoming. I'd treated myself to a new outfit. A cream blouse with a soft sheen, and a deep green skirt that made me feel put together. I intended the night to be a small celebration for us. Sophie had been quiet through most of the meal, scrolling on her phone while the adults talked. Halfway through, she stood to refill her glass with the punch I'd made. I wasn't paying attention until I felt the cold splash on my clothes. Dark red liquid soaked my blouse and skirt, dripped to the floor, and splattered the chair. For a moment I thought it was an accident. But when I looked up, she stood there with an empty glass, staring straight at me. Then, smiling, she said it clearly and loudly, "Now you look as cheap as you really are." Silence followed. Not shocked silence, but an awkward pause where everyone waited for someone else to act. I expected Claire to tell her daughter to apologize. Claire said nothing. My mom broke the pause by shaking her head and saying, "Oh, Emily, it's just a little prank. Don't overreact." That was the moment something inside me changed. I'd endured humiliations from this family before, but this one felt different. I decided it wouldn't stick. I excused myself, still smiling on the outside, but inside I was already planning. I wasn't going to scream, throw a drink, or start a scene. My response would be quiet, deliberate, and timed to land without warning. This birthday wouldn't end with candles and cake. It would end with a lesson Sophie wouldn't forget. After cleaning up, I returned to the table. The room felt heavier. No one met my eyes directly, though I could feel them shift when I moved. I sat as if nothing had happened, refilled my glass, and joined the conversation. Even though my clothes were still damp and smelled of punch, they probably assumed I had let it go, like I usually did. That was their mistake. Sophie avoided my gaze, fiddling with her phone and smirking occasionally, like she'd won. Claire talked about a work project, while my mom tried to keep the evening moving. I laughed with them, nodded, and gave no sign that I was dwelling on the incident. But I was. By the time dessert arrived, my plan had taken shape. I wouldn't be loud or dramatic. My revenge would be quiet, precise, and highly inconvenient. When everyone left, they did so without tension in their voices. Maybe they thought it had blown over. That suited me. I locked the door, poured a glass of wine, and opened my laptop. Claire had once asked me to order something for her while she was overseas. She'd given me her credit card over the phone, and I had saved the details. She never changed the card. Over the years, she likely forgot I still had it. I logged into her account. There it was, the active card with a balance big enough to fund the shopping Sophie had been bragging about. I clicked a few buttons, filled the required reason field, and canceled the card completely. Not frozen, not paused, gone. That was step one. Small and almost invisible, but enough to cause a ripple. I didn't want her to connect it to me immediately. Confusion would be as satisfying as anger. But the real move wasn't about money. Sophie's car, the one she flaunted online and used to ferry friends, wasn't legally hers. My name was on the title. I'd bought it 2 years earlier when Claire's finances were a mess. Under the agreement they'd repay me slowly. They never did, but they acted like the car belonged to Sophie. The keys were in my kitchen drawer. I had a friend, Mark, with a secure garage on the other side of town. That night, I put the keys in my bag and slept with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow morning, Sophie would learn something her mother never taught her. Not everyone plays by your rules. I woke up early the next morning, earlier than usual for a weekend. The house was quiet, still holding the stale tension from the night before. I made coffee, placed my mug on the counter, and picked up my bag. The car keys were right where I had left them. Sophie's weekend routine was predictable. She never got up before 9, unless she had plans. That gave me more than enough time. I slipped outside, unlocked her prized car, and sat behind the wheel. The interior smelled faintly of that overly sweet perfume teenage girls think makes them seem sophisticated. The streets were empty as I drove across town to Mark's workshop. His garage sat behind the building, locked and secure. Mark didn't question why I was there before sunrise. He just watched me pull in, heard me say, "Keep it here for a while," and nodded. That's what I liked about Mark. He never asked for details. By 8:40 a.m., I was back home, sitting at the kitchen table, with my coffee and a clear view of the driveway. Right on cue, Sophie came outside, hoodie, messy bun, keys in hand. She froze. Her head turned left, then right. She checked the curb, the neighbors' driveways, even paced in circles before pulling out her phone. I didn't need to hear the call to imagine her tone, half panic, half outrage. Minutes later, Claire's car screeched into the driveway. She jumped out, already talking fast, waving her arms, scanning the street like she expected the car to reappear. They got back into Claire's car and sped off. I imagined them going straight to the police, Sophie insisting it was stolen, Claire demanding urgency, and the officer calmly explaining the process, knowing most stolen cars turn up nearby. By noon, Claire called me. She didn't ask if I'd seen anything. She launched straight into complaints about how unsafe my neighborhood had become and how the police didn't take things seriously. I responded politely, sympathetic but detached. I let her talk, offering no help, because none was coming. The car was safe, locked away in Mark's garage. I didn't plan to destroy it or even keep it forever. I just wanted to take away something they treated as an entitlement, make them feel the weight of losing it. The best part? They had no idea it was me. By the second day, Claire's tone had changed. Her panic had hardened into frustration. Sophie was furious. Losing the car meant missing a lunch she'd been bragging about, skipping her part-time job, and now Claire wouldn't lend her own car, afraid she'd lose that too. I could picture Sophie sulking in her room, ignoring messages from friends moving on without her. That was satisfying enough, until an unexpected twist came. Claire called mid-morning, sounding stressed, but trying to sound casual. She said her account had been frozen due to suspicious activity on her canceled credit card, and she had an urgent bill to pay. She didn't ask for money right away, but circled around it, mentioning how short she was this month. Eventually, she hinted at needing help. I told her I'd look into it and ended the call. Knowing they were scrambling, while having no clue I'd caused it, was more satisfying than anything I had planned. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store. In the cereal aisle, I nearly bumped into Sophie. She was with two friends, chatting and laughing, until she saw me. Her face changed instantly. I didn't greet her or slow down, just walked past as if she were a stranger. As I turned into the next aisle, I heard her whispering to her friends. One of them glanced at me, unsure whether to believe what Sophie had said. By evening, the situation had shifted again. Claire called, her tone sharper now. She began asking if I'd noticed anyone strange in my neighborhood, if I'd had packages go missing, or if my doorbell camera had caught anything unusual. She didn't accuse me directly, but was clearly fishing for clues. That night, my mom called. She said Claire had mentioned someone in the family might be involved in the missing car. She didn't name me, but I could tell she was testing my reaction. I kept calm, told her I hoped they found it soon, and added maybe it had been abandoned somewhere. The thing about suspicion in families is that it spreads fast. It doesn't sit quietly. It grows, turning people against each other quicker than truth ever could. I hadn't expected them to start doubting each other so soon, but now that they were, I wasn't about to stop it. I just had to stay silent and let the cracks widen. By the third day, I didn't need to see them to know things were falling apart. I could hear it in Claire's clipped tone and the shouting in the background whenever she called. Whatever polite front they'd maintained had collapsed. From her comments, it was clear she'd started pressing Sophie about whether she'd let someone drive the car or done something careless. Sophie swore she hadn't, but Claire didn't believe her. The missing car and frozen card together, combined with Sophie's reputation for carelessness, made suspicion inevitable. Then midday, I got a text from Claire that wasn't meant for me. It read, "If I find out you're hiding something about the car, I'm not bailing you out of it." She'd sent it to the wrong person, me. I didn't respond, just left it, knowing she'd realize her mistake and wonder what I thought of it. A few hours later, a friend called to say there'd been a scene at Claire's house. Sophie had yelled so loudly that neighbors came outside to watch. She accused Claire of always blaming her, while Claire fired back that Sophie was selfish and careless. It ended with Sophie storming into the house and slamming the door hard enough to shake the windows. That evening, Mom called again, her tone cooler than before. She said Claire had repeated her suspicion that someone in the family might be behind the car's disappearance. She didn't name me, but the implication was there. I kept my voice even, told her it'd be terrible if that were true, and promised to keep an eye out. She seemed satisfied, but I could tell she still wondered. The best part? They had no idea the car was safe in Mark's garage. Untouched, spotless, full tank of gas. When I checked on it that afternoon, it was exactly as Sophie had left it, only now she couldn't touch it. At first I planned to keep it for a week. That seemed long enough to make a point. But watching them unravel so quickly, I started thinking maybe a week was generous. If this much chaos came after 3 days, I wanted to see what another few would do. By the 5th day, Claire and Sophie weren't even pretending to get along. What started as tension over the missing car had turned into loud, bitter arguments about everything they'd buried for years. A neighbor told me Sophie shouted that Claire had ruined her life and never trusted her, while Claire accused Sophie of being ungrateful and entitled. The car wasn't the real issue anymore. It was just the spark that set off years of resentment. I could have ended it then. I had the keys. I could have returned the car, called Claire, and played the helpful sister. But there was a certain satisfaction in letting them twist in their own confusion. Both were convinced the world had wronged them, yet neither could pinpoint how. By the 7th morning, I decided it was time. The damage was done, and dragging it out longer might raise the wrong kind of suspicion. I got up before sunrise, grabbed the keys, and drove the car back. I didn't park it in their driveway. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I left it 2 streets over, in front of an empty rental house. I locked the doors, slid the keys under the driver's seat, and walked away without looking back. That afternoon, Claire texted me. The car turned up. No damage. Police have no idea who had it. Then another message. Weirdest thing that's ever happened. I stared at my screen for a moment, smiled and didn't reply. 2 hours later, Sophie posted a picture online, sitting on the hood of the car with the caption, "Guess who's back?" No apology, no mention of the chaos she caused, just another attempt to act like everything was normal. But I knew better. The experience had done its work. They'd felt the loss, the uncertainty, the discomfort. They'd learned at least a little. that things can vanish without warning, and sometimes there's no one to blame but themselves. I never admitted anything, and I never will. That's the beauty of quiet revenge. It leaves no proof, just lingering doubt. From now on, every time Sophie makes a cruel comment or Claire dismisses me, they'll remember that week. They'll pause for a moment, wondering if I'm the one holding the keys again. That hesitation, that second of uncertainty, is worth more than any dramatic confrontation, and that truly was the gift I gave myself on my birthday. The update. 3 weeks passed after the birthday incident, and life seemed to settle. I'd see Sophie's car around town sometimes, and each time I did, I felt a small private satisfaction knowing I'd once made it disappear. Claire's calls had quieted. Mom had stopped asking questions. On the surface, everything was back to normal, or so I thought. One Saturday morning, I was making coffee when my phone rang. Claire's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Not in the mood for her usual tone, but curiosity won. She didn't waste time. "We're coming by. Be home." No explanation, no hint of her mood, just a firm instruction. I considered refusing, but her voice was different this time, softer, almost cautious. Against my better judgment, I agreed. An hour later, I saw them pull into my driveway. Both got out of the car. Sophie wasn't glued to her phone for once. She had her hands tucked into her sleeves, eyes downcast. Claire, instead of her usual confident posture, looked careful, like she didn't want to say the wrong thing. They came to the door together. Sophie held a small bouquet of fresh flowers and handed them to me quietly. Then she gave a faint smile and said, "They're just because." Claire followed with a medium-sized gift bag wrapped neatly in gold paper. She placed it on my table and told me to open it. Inside was a leather tote bag, the same one I'd admired in a store window. Almost a year ago, I'd never told anyone. But Claire must have remembered. It wasn't cheap, and it wasn't the kind of gift I expected from her. Then came the part I never saw coming. They both apologized, not the half-hearted kind that shifts blame. This was different. Claire admitted she'd been wrong to dismiss what happened at my birthday as a joke. She said she should have defended me and regretted not doing so. Sophie, surprisingly, didn't hide behind sarcasm. She said her comment that night was cruel, and she'd been thinking about it since. She even admitted that losing the car, though she still didn't know how, made her realize how easily things can be taken away. I stood there listening, saying little. Part of me wanted to believe them. Maybe they had changed during those chaotic days. But another part of me, the one shaped by years of subtle insults and dismissals, stayed cautious. People can change, but they can also perform change when it benefits them. So I thanked them. I accepted the flowers, the gift, and their apology. I told them it meant a lot to hear those words. And in that moment, I meant it. Forgiveness, for now, felt lighter than resentment. But trust, that would take time. I've learned not to hold grudges for their own sake, but also not to drop my guard too easily. So I'll wait and see what happens. Maybe this is a turning point, or maybe it's just another performance. Either way, I'll enjoy the bag, appreciate the flowers while they last, and remember one simple truth: if things ever return to how they were, it's never hard to take the keys away again.